So in chapter 1139, Skapar Gaban introduces us to a new race of people called the Dosundatas, seeing as how he mentions this in the same breath as the Buccaneers, the Wontons, the Long Arms, and the Long Legs. It is to be assumed that these are a mixed race of people, which also opens up the floodgates to talk about what exactly Long Arm and Long Legs are, but I digress. So what people have been speculating is that this name could just be another name for dwarves, as our Tontata are, which is something I find kind of superfluous because now we have three different names to describe one race of people. We can call them members of the Tontata tribe, we can call them dwarves, and now presumably people think these are Dosundatas as well. I get the correlation people are making because Dosun relates back to hammers. We had a guy in the New Fishman Pirates who was named Dosun, whom carried a hammer and was a hammerhead shark fishman. So I get it. And then too, Tontatas use their tails as hammers when attacking. So the correlations are there. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense to confuse the audience with a third name of a singular race. It just doesn't make narrative logic to me. What I think is going on, and this is another popular thought, but I'm going to expand on it. As I have said, and many people have said, I think Dosundatas relate to whatever Scotch and Rock are from the Punk Hazard arc, the Yeti Cool brothers. I think they are Dosundatas, but I don't think it's just them. You see in One Piece, and I have heard no one talk about this for as long as I've been reading and watching One Piece content on YouTube, no one has mentioned this, but and this has actually been expounded upon in recent years with a live action adaptation. But in One Piece, there is a sect of people who are just weird animal freaks. What do I mean by this? I'm not saying that they're mink, but I think there's a race of people that are just weirdly half mink or like a quarter mink. And we've seen these types of people since pretty much the start of One Piece, because in Usopp's village, of course, there's a guy named Mary. Mary looks like he's part sheep, which makes sense because he makes a sheep slash ram style boat in the Going Merry. What's so funny about Mary is that in the costuming of the One Piece live action adaptation, when we see Mary in season 1 of that show, they really do up the sheep style makeup to make him look more animalistic. So that's why I'm saying it's weirdly made out to be a point that he's not a normal human, that he's some sort of weird sheep man, right? So that's why I'm saying it's very likely that he has mink blood in him, but he's a mixture of mink and human. On top of that, what's even further more interesting about this is that when you go to Punk Hazard, despite there being so many weird animal freaks on Punk Hazard, there is no explanation for one, the Yeti Cool brothers, and two, Caesar Clown himself. Because Caesar Clown, in no way, shape, or form, has been affected by the powers of Law's Op fruit. He just naturally has goat or ram horns like Mary. And from the Mads cover story, we see that he has literally had them throughout his entire life. Same with Mary. He has always had horns, because you see a younger version of him when he's drafting the Going Merry. He has always had horns. And I find that very interesting, especially in Caesar Clown's case, when there's a whole island of people affected by Law's ability, yet he is just the lone freak that hasn't been. And it's also very interesting too that, like I just said, he shares an arc with Scotch and Rock, two people whom I think are of the same category. Now, I know Scotch and Rock are giants, but I think this could be kind of like a catch-all term for people of that persuasion, kind of like how Fishmen and Merfolk are all kind of the same thing, and they all can be any size, basically. Like Wadasume is the size of a giant, and then Shirahoshi too is the size of a giant. Like there's no limits on how big these people can be. So I think this goes the same for Dosundatas. I think they can be of any size, but they have to have some sort of animal trait to them. With that being said, another funny one that no one mentions, and it's a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing, but Mach Vice is one. Because Mach Vice, even when he's depicted as a child, has this weird beaver tail. And I thought from looking at him in the modern day that it was a part of his weird clothing. No, it's either like a beaver or a raccoon tail. It's very hard to make out. But when he's 36, you can see that it's just sticking out of his clothes. Like it's just naked there, hanging. And then when he's a child, he has it too. And then, of course, when he becomes older, it's like covered up. But he has this weird beaver tail. And I think this is because he is a part of this Dosundara race, whatever it may be. And I think the interesting bit about them is that perhaps they have an easier time hiding amongst people, because if you don't really pick it up, they look like they're human. And perhaps some have it worse than others. Like perhaps Scotch and Rock are like the most extreme variation of what a Dosundara can be. And it's weird with them because they're both giant sized, and I forget which one, but one of them looks like an Eastern Island head and the other one is just wearing a gas mask. So that's really weird. But yeah, I think out of those guys, they could be part of this weird Dosundara race. Now, another two persons whom I think could probably be Dosundaras, I'm not sure about this. This could be going out on a limb here. But the two members of the Sarayama Alliance, brothers Masura and Shoujo, I probably butchered their names, but they look like monkeys. They look like apes. They don't have tails, that's true, but in the face, they look like apes. And it's very funny thinking back to what mink call humans hairless monkey minks, because these two guys literally look like monkeys. Sujo looks like an orangutan, and then Masira looks like kind of like a chimpanzee. So perhaps that's the case. And it's weird too that this comes through in their individual Jolly Rogers. They're very ape-like, they're very monkey-like. So with that being said, I think these guys too could be Dosundaras. These weird animal mink hybrids that just seem to pop up all across the world. Now, I could be missing some, I'm not sure. But if I do find more, I'll make sure to make a video about it. I've been thinking about these people for a very long time, and it kept escaping me to make a video about it, but I think this is a great opportunity. So to break it down, I think Dosundaras are not another name for dwarves. I think it's a catch-all term for people who aren't exactly minks, but have animalistic-like qualities, such as Scotch, Rock, Caesar Clown, and Mary. But with that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede. What?